All right, everyone, good afternoon. We are going to, well, actually, good morning. We are going to be working on checkpoint 4 today. Checkpoint 4 is something that you're going to be familiar with. Most of you have done this already. For some of you, this might be new. And I wanted to make sure to go over it together with you so you could all understand it and be on the same page. Checkpoint 4 is on fraction busters. And so we are going to go over some problems together. I want you to show your work. I want you to write these problems down on your paper, and then you are going to do some checkpoint practice problems on your own on the same piece of paper. So please label the top of your paper checkpoint 4, and please write the following problem up on the board. Now, by the way, at any point in this video, you can pause and re-watch, or you can pause and write down your work. In fact, several times throughout the video, I will ask you to pause and do the work and then unpause whenever you are finished. So you are going to be taking notes on this as if it were a lesson itself, but this gives you a chance to kind of go at your own pace. Okay, so please pause the video and write down the first equation you see on the board here. When you're done, unpause. Okay, so you got the first equation written down. Now, fraction busters, the point of fraction busters is to make equations a little bit easier for you to possibly solve. Now, we could solve this equation up on the board perfectly fine just as it is and leave the 1/6 as a fraction. However, there are some times when getting rid of the fractions is going to be beneficial to us. To do that, what we're going to do is we are going to multiply the entire equation by a value that will get rid of the fraction, which in this case, as you probably can tell, that value is going to be 6. So multiply everything by 6. Now, letting you know, you can choose to do a couple of different ways. You could go ahead and multiply it and put 6 over 6m. Or you could say instead that when I do this work here, multiplying by 6, which is basically 6 over 1, times 1 over 6, the 6 cancel out, and that just gets rid of it to where you're just left with m. 1m. Either way, however you want to do it is fine by me in this situation. But there are going to be some times when you're going to want to make sure that you know exactly how to show that. And you might want to actually show 6 over 6m. The biggest mistake people make when working with fraction busters, though, is forgetting to multiply all the terms in the entire equation by that 6. So you do 6 times -3, which is -18, equals 6 times 5, which is -5, which is -30. And then this, as we mentioned before, becomes a 1, so it can go away. And then I just solve by adding 18 to both sides, and m equals -12. Which would be my answer. So as you notice, this is something we could do. And it's not always going to be this simple, but we're going to be practicing this. So let's go on to the second problem. Second problem. And you see the problem right here. Please go ahead and take a second and write it down. When you're done, unpause it. Okay, so we've got this next expression here, or this next equation here. We're going to get rid of the fractions. Now, there are two options as to how to do that. The main thing we're aiming for is we're looking for something that will get one value that will get rid of both or all fractions in this whole equation. So the easiest way to do that is to find the common denominator. The common denominator of 3 and 2 is 6, so you would multiply everything by 6. Now, going back to the first problem, here is where I said that you could run into some issues if you try to do too much in your head. And I've seen many students make a lot of silly mistakes because they did stuff in their head. It would not be a bad idea to go ahead and multiply this and do 6 times 2 and get 12 over 3x. And then 6 times -3, which is -18, equals 6 times 1/2, which is 6 halves x, and 6 times -7, which is -42. Then you can go in here and say, oh, 12 divided by 3 would be 4x minus 18. 6 divided by 2 is 3x minus 42. And then you would go ahead and finish solving the equation. Subtract 3x from both sides, and you get that x minus 18 equals -42. Add 18 to both sides, and you get x equals, oh man, how much is that? Let me see, -32, -24. So my answer would be x equals -24. That is one way to solve it. However, I do want to show you a second way to solve it. So please go ahead, and we know that the answer is x equals -24. Please go ahead and rewrite this expression to the right. 2/3 x, let me fix that there so you can see it right. 2/3 x minus 3 equals 1/2 x minus 7. I want to show you a different way to do this, okay? And there are some teachers that swear by this method instead. They really prefer this method, and I have no preference either way, but I do want you to see how we can do it. So instead of multiplying by 6, some teachers suggest finding both common denominators, or both denominators, and multiplying instead of 6, multiplying by 3 times 2. And you're like, 3 times 2 is 6. I know, but look what the difference it makes. When I take just this part together, 2/3 times 3 times 2, this becomes 3 times 2 over 1. And this 3 cancels out the 3 to where you're left with just 2 times 2, which is 4x. Now, you do have to remember 3 times 2 is 6 times -3, which would still be -18. And then 3 times 2 times 1/2, in this case, the 2's cancel out. And so all you're left with is 3 times 1, which would be 3. And then you have x. And then 3 times 2 times -7 is -42. Now, if you notice, that's the same thing as this right here. It just cancels out here. The 3 cancels out the 3. The 2 cancels out this 2. And therefore, you're left with multiplying the other values. Some of you are like, that's way too much work. Sometimes this method will be easier to solve your fraction busters than multiplying by a common denominator, because sometimes this number is going to get really big and will make your multiplication of values incredibly large. So be aware of both methods, maybe be familiar with both methods, and then pick which one you think is most appropriate for the situation. All right, our last problem for today is this problem right here. I want you to actually pause the video and solve the whole problem yourself first, and then you'll unpause it when you're done, and then we will go over it together and see if you got the same thing. So pause the video and do the problem. Okay, so you paused it. Now let's see what you did. First, again, the goal is to multiply everything by something that will cancel out the fractions. In this particular case, we have a couple options, but the best case scenario in this situation would be to multiply everything by 4. Common denominator, 4 and 2. So 4 times x is 4x. 4 times x in this case becomes plus 4x divided by 2. And then minus 4 times 4, which is 16, equals, and again, 4x divided by 4. Then I can simplify. So 4x divided by 2 would be 2x minus 16, and 4x divided by 4 would be x. Then I combine like terms. 6x minus 16 equals x. I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides, and I get -16 equals -5x divided by -5 on both sides. Oh, that cancels that out, and you get negative divided by negative is a positive, so positive 16/5 equals x, or I could also say 3 1/5 equals x. So that would be my answer for that problem there. Okay, so you're not always going to get whole numbers when you solve these problems. Sometimes you are going to have values that are going to give you something other than that. How did you do? Did you get that correct? And hopefully this is something that you have done before. Fraction Busters is the name of it. If you haven't, this is something you might want to rewatch, or you might want to ask me questions about it so you can understand better. You are now going to go to checkpoint 3 in your book. You should know how to get to it. Actually, I'm sorry, checkpoint 4. Go to checkpoint 4 in your online book, and you're going to start with the problems in the checkpoint section. There are 12 practice problems. I want you to start working on those problems. I'd actually prefer that you start working backwards, starting with number 12 and working your way backwards, because problem number 1 and some of the other problems are pretty straightforward. You should be able to solve them easily. However, if you feel really lost, you might want to start with problem number 1 and solve it that way. So just so you know, this is where you would go. You would go to your online book, and on your online book, you are going to go to your math book, and then go down here and appendix or reference section here. This reference, when you click on that, you will see checkpoints and checkpoint 4. You might have to click on it here or you might have some tabs you can check on it. And right here are the problems, 12 problems right here, and 12 practice, or the answers are below, so check your answers after you've done them. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, good job working on this.